The reason that
How about the floor one?
the reason we're not in the sanctuary and we're online is because I fractured my wrist earlier this week and I have a cast now, and I'm still figuring out how to do everything. So, Rabbi Linda Henry Goodman, who was one of my classmates who was with us before when I had another injury, but she graciously said that she would lead services this evening. So, I'm glad to be able to be here with everybody and wanted to ask if we have a volunteer, if someone who will be the voice for the congregation. So when Linda asks us all to read, someone will lead that part. I don't see any hands yet. Since my computer has a buzz, I'm not going to be the person to do it, I don't think. I don't want to keep buzzing. Okay, Alan and Maureen are going to do it. Very good. And we'll be moving through our celebration of Shabbat together. So I'm turning things over to Rabbi Goodman, and thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, of course. Now, Alan, may I just ask, are Alan and Maureen is your name? Yes. Are you going to light the candles, or Rabbi Wartel?
I'll light the candles. They're going to, if you have a congregational reading and you want to read responsively, or we all,
Okay.
they'll lead that.
So I'm going to put the service on the screen share. Can you all, let me get it onto page 2. Can you all see this text okay? Yes? Okay. I don't, do I need, it's pretty big, so it's visible to you?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Rabbi.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. All right, and I will lead the Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsha be'ahava u'b'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lemase v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrei kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharka ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'beratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. All right. Alan and/or Maureen, may I ask you to read this first reading on page 9? You'll have to unmute.
There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared for nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace
Shabbat,
day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace.
All right, now I have put together some of my favorite settings of some of the texts in the service. And this setting of Lecha Dodi, of just a couple of the verses, is by a friend of Rabbi Goldman Wartel's and mine from school. She was in cantorial school when we were in rabbinic school, Cantor Rochelle Nelson, and it's being sung by Cantor Mark Opatow. And let's hope that you can hear this. The setting that I'm going to play of Shalom Aleichem is of a group that's based in Jerusalem called Nava Tehillah. When my husband and I are there, as God willing will be in July, we often go to Kabbalah Shabbat services that they conduct in the first station, the Tachana HaRishona in the middle of Jerusalem, and everybody from Jerusalem comes. It's an outdoor affair, and they're really great. So let's hope again that I can find it, and here we are. Oh, okay. I should tell you, friends, that I am not going to be standing up during the course of the service because I don't want to risk my position with the microphone. But at the point in the service when it's customary to rise, if you're comfortable doing so, please feel free. Yitkadas Shmei Rava Belma Divra Hirutei V'Yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon U'Yom Echon U'V'chayei L'chol Beit Yisrael Bagala Bagala U'Bizman Kariv V'Meru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam La'almei Almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach Yishtabach Yitba'ar V'Yitromam V'Yitnasei V'Yithadar V'Yit'aleh V'Yit'alal Shemei D'Kudesha B'Rechu Ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimeru Amen.
We are seeing the page where you get the songs from. We're not seeing our book right now.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Screen. How's that?
That's it.
Okay. Okay. So we're at the Baruch Hu, for those of you who are comfortable standing. Please feel free. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam vaed. Please be seated. All right. A reader, please, on page 30 in English.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars and their heavenly courses according to plan. You are the creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvot is your name. Ever-living God, you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening.
Baruch atah Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim. This is Debbie Friedman. And we'll hear Debbie Friedman in a moment.
ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם הבא. חיינו ונברך ימינו ובהם נגי יום ולילה, נגי יום ולילה.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. ואהבת את Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol me'otecha והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Why don't we read responsively? I'll read the reader's part and you can read to yourselves, I guess, on page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. Alan?
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
And this is Cantor Richard Silverman.
Yabba ba bim bim bam, yabba ba bim bam, yabba ba bim bim bam, yabba ba bim bam, ay 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 ay, yabba ba bim bam, ay 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 ay, yabba ba bim bam, beat amo amali Adonai, beat amo Nehedar Bakodesh, Torah Hilot, O Sifel, Torah Hilot, O Sifel, Yom Baba Bim Bim Bam, Yom Baba Bim Bam, Yom Baba Bim Bim Bam, Yom Baba Bim Bam, ay 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 ay, Yom Baba Bim Bam. Ay, 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 Baba Bim Bam, Malekute Arau Banecha, Bokeh Ayama Yipne Moshe, Zeheli, Zeheli, Yadu V'Yameru, Adonai Imloch Leolam Vayet, Yom Baba Bim Bim Bam, Yom Baba Bim Bam, Yom Baba Bim Bim Bam, Yom Baba Bim Bam, ay 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 ay, Baba Bim Bam, ay 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 ay, Baba Bim Bam.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. You can't see the text. Okay, let's try it again. I'm gonna have to, I know there's a skill to this that I haven't acquired yet. Do you see it now? Okay. So let me read this again. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. This is Debbie.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ברית עולם. בני ובני בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. בני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שעה. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם.
All right, friends, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You didn't hear that music at all?
We
We
heard
heard
a lot.
a part of it. It cut off in the last chorus. The
It,
last
it cut off once you muted yourself, and when you unmuted, it came back.
All right, I thought if I muted myself, it would be better because I was getting messages from one or two of you, so I won't mute myself. All right. Let's go to the Amida. So for these pages, again, if you feel comfortable to rise, please do. And if you'd rather remain seated, of course, please do. And just reassure me that you can hear my voice. Can you hear my voice? Okay. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Bekonei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, בנאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated. May I have a reader? God of goodness.
God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us, so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks.
Baruch ata Adonai hatov shimcha ulechana el hodot. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and to give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes, Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai hamevarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Why don't we take a few moments of personal reflection? Ose shalom bimroma uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel Veimeru. Amen. And so we remember during these moments, we remember those among our families and friends who are ill at this time. And of course, we wish Rabbi Goldman Wartell a full and speedy healing as well. Neil Auerbach, Shirley Berger, Alan Burke, Rona Bluestein, Charles Bonnet, Lori Bricks, Frank Burla, Angel Boussard, Jason Boussard, Brendan Burns, Jack Cassis, Michael Connors, Anita Dreyer, Lisa Epison, Monica Fernandez, Allison Fryman, excuse me, Allison Fryman, Stephen Friedman, Carol Gage, Christine Gelino, Sharon Grant, Howard Grubstein, Andrea Hankey, Marty Honeychuck, Sarit Katsu, Reverend Rebecca Kindig, Jeff Korn, Tegan Christopherson, Alan Krupczynski, Mattia Latessa, Leah Butt Rachel, Brooke Little, Bob Luckner, Joyce Perry, Deborah Pomeroy, David Rosenberg, Connor Stanton, Jennifer Steele, Romeo Stenta, Craig Stout, Josh Swanger, George Turner, Marilyn Turner, Don Vanderbrook, Kevin Wade, Kevin Warner, Rhonda Waxman, Elena Witter, Kevin Williamson, Noah Wolkowitz, Brian Zabel, Debbie Zabataki, Jagger Za, and I also would name my friend Shauna Zell. Does anyone have anyone else that they'd like to mention at this time? Please unmute yourselves.
Eva Weinstein.
It's in the, please put it in the chat, right? Sharon Kirschheimer and Martin Fishkin. All right. Why don't we try this version of Misha Berach on our own? Misha Berach Avotenu Mikor Abracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mikor Abracha Lamotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. All right. So a little Torah study, if I may, or Talmud study more accurately. Okay, can you see that picture? Yes? All right, let me see if I can.
You can see it.
You can see it? Okay. Good. All right, we'll look at that picture a little later. Can you see this text? Is it big enough? The two heroes of Lag BaOmer. Okay, excellent. So as you probably know, yesterday was Lag BaOmer. And just to review, we remember that Pesach, the second day of Pesach, begins the barley harvest in Eretz Yisrael. And there are 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot, and each day the Omer is counted. Now, I grew up in the middle of Manhattan, or in lower Manhattan, technically, I guess, in an apartment, a 4-room apartment. So I have had no idea what the Omer was, and I certainly had no idea what a sheaf of wheat was. But this picture apparently is what a sheaf of wheat looks like. Each of these, anyone here who may have grown up on a farm or in a more agricultural territory, I guess in upstate New York, there are a lot of farms. Each one of these is a sheaf of wheat. It's an amount large enough to require bundling. And you see here, there are bundles of wheat. It's generally thought to be 4 dry pints, and you can carry it under your arm. That looks kind of big to carry under your arm, but I guess if you're a big person, it's not too bad. Every day within the 49-day period that we're in now, and then on Shavuot, the fruits of the barley harvest are presented. So we know that Shavuot is known in our tradition as Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of the Torah. But also this agricultural aspect, the harvest cycle aspect of this holiday is in the presentation of the first fruits of the barley harvest. You know, each of the three regalim. Can someone remind us, what are the shalosh regalim, the three pilgrimage festivals? What are they again? Someone want to unmute yourself? All right, well, you know this. It's Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Those are the chagim, or the pilgrimage festivals, the regalim. A regel is a leg or a foot, and people went up to Jerusalem during these 3 times a year, especially on foot. So they're called regalim. And each one has 2 aspects: a particularistic aspect, Jewish historic significance, and an agricultural, a harvest cycle rooted significance. So Pesach, of course, is the time of our freedom, but it's also the beginning of the barley harvest. Shavuot is the time of the revelation of Torah. We'll celebrate that soon. But it's also the presentation of the first fruits of this harvest. And then Sukkot, at the beginning of the fall, is really the time, Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy, and also the ingathering of the summer fruits. So Shavuot is the time of the giving of the Torah and the presentation of the first fruits of the barley harvest. Lag BaOmer, yesterday, is the 33rd day of this 49-day period. Why is it called Lag BaOmer? Because, as you remember, every Hebrew letter has a numeric equivalent. So the letter Lamed here is number 30, and the letter Gimel is number 3. So together, Lamed Gimel, or Lag, if you will, is an abbreviation, is the number 33. That's how Hebrew is written. So what's the big deal with Lag BaOmer? Why is it so significant? It has to do with 2 outstanding rabbinic figures who become the heroes of this day of Lag BaOmer, and I'd like to look at the reasons why with you now. So the first is Rabbi Akiva, whom I'm assuming that you've heard of somewhere in your travels. Rabbi Akiva was an outstanding rabbinic figure of the late 1st and early 2nd centuries of the Common Era, whose teachings are recorded in the Mishnah. But he also was one of the leaders of the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome from 132 to 135 of the Common Era. And he suffered a horrible, brutal death at the hands of the Romans when the rebellion was finally crushed. And if you'll remember from the services on the afternoon of Yom Kippur, just before the Yizkor service, his name figures in the martyrology. There's a list of martyrs that we remember at that time. And Akiva is one of them. So this is a little tale from the Babylonian Talmud, tractate Yevamot. Yevamot has to do primarily with converts, with conversion. This is from the page of 62 Bet B. Can I have a volunteer? I just broke this up in this way, just for clarity's sake, so that we can keep track of who's who and what's what, and it'll be especially helpful, I think, well, you know what? Let me read this, and then we'll break it up the next piece of the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students, so that's 24,000 students. Must have been a big school. He had 12,000 pairs of students in an area of land that stretched from Givat in the Jezreel Valley to Antipatris, which is near what is now Petach Tikva. It was in Judea, in the land of Israel. And they all died in one stretch of time, 12,000 pairs of students. This was in the period from Passover until Shavuot, and they probably died from the plague of diphtheria. We certainly have had our own problems with a plague in the past 2 years. But according to the tradition, the Shulchan Aruch and elsewhere, the plague ceased on the 33rd day of the Omer, and thus that day, yesterday, became a day of rejoicing. And so the Omer period, as you may know, is observed by most, pretty much all Orthodox Jews and many conservative Jews as a period of semi-mourning. Men don't shave. Women generally don't cut their hair. No weddings are supposed to take place during that period of time. People don't listen to music. But on the 33rd day of the Omer period, these restrictions are relaxed. So the caterers and the wedding halls for Jews are crowded to the gills on Lag BaOmer. Generally, I think I'm safe in saying that probably most Reform rabbis do not observe this period of Omer, and particularly not in this way. We do weddings and listen to music. But in the Orthodox community, it is observed in this way. So the text in Yevamot tells us, it continues by telling us that after the plague, Rabbi Akiva, after these 24,000 students died, unfortunately, then he went on to rebuild his academy, and he raised up many disciples, among them 5 prominent scholars: Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Judah, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shammua, and they're all featured in the Talmud. So Rabbi Akiva was the first hero of Lag BaOmer. Now for the second hero. And the connection, as you see, is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was one of the disciples of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also, like his teacher, became an opponent of the Roman government. So he criticized the Roman government and anybody who collaborated, who consorted with it, and those really who participated in the what he believed to be the hedonistic practices of the Roman government. This man, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, is credited in some circles, certainly in Chabad and in the Haredi world. He is credited with the writing of the Zohar, which is the central work of mystical literature. The Zohar was actually written in 13th century Spain by Moses de Leon. But the Hasidic world believes that it was written by Shimon Bar Yochai. What is his connection to Lag BaOmer? According to tradition, he died on the 33rd day of the Omer, on Lag BaOmer. So there are many pilgrimages made to his tomb on Lag BaOmer by Haredi Jews, ultra-Orthodox Jews, in the Galilee, in Meron, not far from the city of Tzfat. In fact, Tzfat is built on Har Meron. You may remember that last year there was a terrible tragedy up there at Meron. There was a collapse of the bleachers, I guess, and several dozen, I guess, of these young men who went there were killed, unfortunately. It was a terrible tragedy. It was averted this year, thankfully. What happened to my, can you see that? Again, I clicked on something I didn't mean to. Okay, another little tale from the Talmud. This is from Tractate Shabbat, which of course is about Shabbat. So this is the one that I broke up into just arbitrarily. There are no scenes marked in the Talmud, but just to make it clear who was talking about what. If someone would be willing to read what I have put as the narrator's part on the left margin, and I'll read the quotes of these rabbis, which is on the right, indented. Would someone be the narrator? Rabbi Goldman Wortel?
Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon were sitting, and Yehuda, son of convert, sat beside them. And Rabbi Yehuda opened up and said,
"How pleasant are the actions of this nation, the Romans, as they established marketplaces, established bridges, and established bathhouses." Everything that they established only for their own purposes. They established marketplaces to place prostitutes in them, bathhouses to pamper themselves, and bridges to collect taxes from all who pass over them.
Yehuda, son of converts, went and related their statements to his household, and the statements continued to spread until they were heard by the monarchy. And they ruled and said,
Yehuda, so this is the Romans now who got wind of what they were saying, and this was their pronouncement. Yehuda, who elevated the Roman regime, shall be elevated and appointed as head of the sages, the head of the speakers in every place. Yosei, who remained silent, shall be exiled from his home in Judea as punishment and sent to the city of Tzipori in the Galilee. And Shimon, the Shimon Bar Yochai, Shimon, who denounced the government, shall be killed. Okay, so the Romans heard that he criticized them. That's it. Death to him. So what happens next? Scene 2, if you will.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar went and hid in the study hall. Every day Rabbi Shimon's wife would bring them bread and a jug of water. When the decree intensified, Rabbi Shimon said to his son,
"Women are easily impressionable, and therefore there's room for concern lest the authorities torture her and she reveal our whereabouts."
They went and they hid in a cave. A miracle occurred, and a carob tree was created for them, as well as a spring of water. They would remove their clothes and sit covered in sand up to their necks. They would study Torah all day in that manner. At the time of prayer, they would dress, cover themselves, and pray, and they would again remove their clothes afterwards, so that they would not become tattered. They sat in the cave for 12 years. Elijah the prophet came and stood at the entrance of the cave and said,
"Who will inform Bar Yochai that the emperor died and his decree has been abrogated?" Okay, so let's just review this for a second, and then we'll go on to the last. So Shimon Bar Yochai criticized the Roman government and all of their manifestations, and an order for his death was issued. He and his son went to hide in the Bet Midrash, in the study hall. And every day, Shimon's wife and the mother of Eleazar would bring them water and food. And when the decree was intensified, Shimon got worried and he thought, uh-oh, women, these women, they can't be trusted. Maybe the authorities will torture her and she'll tell them where we are. So they went and they hid in a cave. Okay? And a miracle occurred. Suddenly a carob tree appeared and a spring of water. And so every day they would take their clothes off and cover themselves up to their necks in sand. And all day long they'd study Torah that way. When the time came for them to pray, they'd take off the sand and they'd get dressed. They'd cover themselves, that presumably means a talit, and they'd pray. And then they'd take their clothes off again so that they wouldn't get rumpled. And they would do the same thing. They'd put their sand on again. And this went on for 12 years. They sat in a cave in this way. And they had water and a carob tree. So Elijah, who appears when people are in distress, Elijah came and stood at the cave, and apparently the emperor died. The emperor who issued the decree. And Elijah says, so who's going to go and tell them they can come out of the cave because the emperor is dead? Okay? Now, theme 3. Rabbi.
They emerged from the cave and saw people who were plowing and sowing. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said,
These people abandon eternal life of Torah study and engage in temporal life for their own sustenance.
The Gemara relates that every place that Rabbi Shimon, his son Rabbi Elazar, directed their eyes was immediately burned. A divine voice emerged and spoke to them.
So just if you can picture this, somehow, they were like, Superman or something. If they stared at a place, it would ignite. And a divine voice, what's called a bat kol in the Talmud, God's voice basically, said to them, did you emerge from the cave in order to destroy my world? Return to your cave, go back. I don't want you out here. So
they again went, and this time they sat for 12 months.
And they said, the judgment of the wicked in Gehenna lasts for 12 months. Surely their sin was atoned in that time.
A divine voice, Bat Kol, emerged and said to them,
emerge from your cave.
Emerged, and everywhere that Rabbi Elazar would strike, Rabbi Shimon would heal. Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Elazar,
my son, you and I suffice for the entire world, as the two of us are engaged in the proper study of Torah. So this little tale leaves us with 2 questions. What is God's view of Shimon Bar Yochai? At first, God seems to want to save him from the Romans, right? Because he has criticized the Romans. Then somehow God seems to switch sides. Because when he comes out of the cave, remember what happened? He said, look at all these people, the Jews, the other Jews. Look at these people, they're worried about their land and their farming and they're tilling the land. And they're not sitting like we are studying all day long. But God challenges him. Would someone like to read this? Rabbi, you want to read? No, you're muted.
would you destroy my world? But in this case, God's world is the real world, the one in which the farmers have to make a living, not the one in the cave.
Right. So, God is essentially saying to them, you know, it's fine for you to sit in the cave for 12 years and study Torah, you know, or study what you're studying. But these people are living in the real world. They're working, they're tilling the land, they're farmers, they have to make a living. So what do you want to do? You want to destroy all these people because they're making a living? So this really leads to the second and perhaps the more salient question. Does Torah study, or study in general of Jewish tradition, and participation in the real world have to be in conflict? So has anyone here seen the series Shtisel? Shtisel? Yeah, maybe you could unmute yourselves. Can you unmute yourselves?
There we go. Yeah, we watched the series.
How are the protagonists of Shtisel, the Shtisel family, basically, how are they portrayed? They're Haredim, right? They're black hats, ultra-Orthodox Jews.
They
How
are.
are they portrayed? What do they do?
Well, the elder has a school where the children are being taught. Okay, but his son is an artist, and he doesn't do a lot of Torah study.
Doesn't do a lot of Torah study. And how is he viewed? Kiva, right? Kivi. Akiva.
Yeah. Yep.
Akiva.
Yep.
Another Akiva.
Yeah. Not
How
the
is
same
he
as the
viewed
other.
by the Shtisels?
Ne'er-do-well.
As a ne'er-do-well, exactly. Exactly. What's he doing? What is he spending his life in an art studio? He should be with the rest of them in the yeshiva studying all day. And that, in fact, is what the rest of them do, right?
Right.
Right.
Kivi's brother, Kiva, I guess his name is.
Yeah, Kiva.
Kiva's brother, Tzvi Aryeh, and his sister's son-in-law and their son.
Oh.
They all sit in the yeshiva and study all day. How do they make a living? These people, because that is reflective of reality.
The wives
The
work.
wives work.
The wives work. The wives work. The wives work, and they also, by the way, they do receive stipends.
Yep.
From
taxes.
The government. Yeah, from the government and from other Jewish organizations. But they sit in the yeshiva all day and they study. That picture is not the kind of Jewish life, obviously, that any of us have chosen, even though we spend a lot of time studying Torah and Jewish texts and spend a lot of time thinking and participating in the Jewish world. For us, the Jewish world is, I mean, you tell me, is the Jewish world and the world at large, are these at odds, or should they be?
Well, for us as Reformed Jews, we're not really at odds with the rest of the timing of what's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. We do study at Chabad, so we see the difference of how their lives interact with the real world, or don't in some cases.
And that's the way they're raised. And they don't know any other way, except those who break out.
Right. What I will say is that the Orthodox world, of course, is fragmented. just as a reflection of the whole Jewish community, which is rather fragmented, even though it's unified then again on a certain level. And modern Orthodoxy, of course, spends a lot of time studying, but there is the aspiration of harmonizing their lives as Jews with participation in the world that is. So it's an interesting view. Let me just show you one little visual treat that we remember from this piece of the Talmud. Do you remember that inside the cave that Shimon and Elazar were in, there was a carob tree, because the fruit of the carob tree is very sweet. Anyone here ever been to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem? Yes? When you go to Israel, when you go to Jerusalem, go to Yad Vashem. It's the central Holocaust memorial. Outside the main museum and the memorials is an amazing garden called the Garden of the Righteous, Sadot Chasidei Umot HaOlam, the Garden of the Righteous, for people from outside the Jewish community, non-Jews, the rescuers who saved Jews during the Shoah. This is the dedication sign on the garden. Here you see where it is. This is the garden. And all these trees bear the names of various rescuers, the Hasidim, the merciful ones, the righteous among the nations, and all these trees lining this street are carob trees. Here is the fruit of carob trees. This is what hangs from the branches of carob trees. Anyone here ever go to a specialty store around Tu B'Shvat and get what's called Boxer or St. John's bread? Carob, have you ever eaten this? Anyone ever eaten it? you have eaten it, Susan.
We used to get it at Temple Concord when we were in Sunday school.
At Temple Concord, but here in the United States, what is it like to eat this stuff? Is it good?
I don't know that would be my favorite thing to have, but
because I'll tell you, my experience of eating this in New York is that it's literally like eating shoe leather. It's like eating shoe leather. You can't even break it with your teeth. What I will tell you is that I actually have picked these things off of carob trees in Israel, off of these, not these particular trees, they were elsewhere in the Judean hills, and they're not hard at all. They're not leathery. They're softer. They're not soft, but they're much softer, and they're very sweet. So I guess the thought in planting these trees along this avenue was to add some measure of sweetness to the bitterness that this visit awakens. Okay. Let's go back to the Aleinu. Oh, you know what? Before we get to the Aleinu, now that we've studied Lag BaOmer, is that we have to do the counting of the Omer for this day. Can you see this text? Yes? Okay. הנני מוכן מזומן לקיים מצוות עשה של ספירת העומר. I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קדשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על ספירת העומר. Our praise to you, Adonai, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer. Hayom chamisha v'shloshim yom shehem chamisha shavuot la'omer. Today is the 35th day, which is 7 weeks of the Omer. And for those of you who would like to rise, please do. And if you're more comfortable remaining seated, please do. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kagoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Please be seated. At this time, we call to mind and mention by name those who have died in recent days. Nancy Price, mother of Brooke Shapiro Woods and Jesse, and Aaron Shapiro DeMano and Carl, grandmother of Brendan and Victoria Garcia, and Arden and Cole DeMano. Jeremiah Hazen, nephew of Robin Hazen, and if I may, Rabbi Stephen Sager, a friend of mine from the Hartman Institute, who was the Rabbi Emeritus of Congregation Bethel in Durham, North Carolina, passed away several days ago. And at this time of Yartzeit, we remember Ethel Jaker, Yaakov Shoer, Edward Rappaport, Evalea Weiss, Henrietta Winter, Leo Winter, Samuel Heyman, Tilly I. Gordon, Lorraine Susskind, Gutenberg, Rita Cohn Feldstein. Would anyone like to name anyone else who has not been mentioned? Would you like to write it in the chat? Shh. Okay. Please rise if you would like. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'le'almei almaya, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קדושה ברך הוא. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Please be seated. Does anyone have any announcements to make? Rabbi?
I will remind you tomorrow morning, Torah study on Zoom and in person in the morning. And tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, we have Havdalah with a bonus with Rabbi Esserman and myself at 7 o'clock. On Sunday, we have Kilmer Days, and they have plans for a lot of things to be inside as the weather does not look so great, but it is a free event, catering and figuring for families and kids, people of all ages from 12 to 4. And you have been getting information about that for a little while, I think. It's actually a busy week in many different ways. So on Wednesday, we have the Inter-Sisterhood event at Beth David at 7 o'clock with Rogers and Sperberstein. Better Than Never is their title for their program. And many of us have heard them in their parodied versions of Broadway tunes before. So that is the Inter-Sisterhood program. Thursday evening is our annual meeting at 7 o'clock. You can either be on Zoom or be in the sanctuary. Voting will take place in both places. So the information for the links are not in the happenings, but members should have received all that information. If you aren't sure that you have the information, if you want to come on Zoom, contact someone from the board or contact Delorme in the office, and she'll get you the information before Thursday. So those are the things coming up in the near future. Rabbi Brown and I met 2 days ago, I think, and then again today, planning our Shavuot programs together. So we're going to do an ice cream social on a Saturday evening, and then on that Sunday morning we'll be doing services at Temple Israel together. And Rabbi Rachel and I have decided on June 3rd is the actual date that Rabbi Sally Presant was ordained 50 years ago. So we are both going to do some reflections, the impact of that for us in our choices and what we've been doing since then. So we're going to do that Friday night at services on June 3rd. The 10th through the 12th is our Solace Cohen Scholar in Residence Weekend with Cantor Jeff Klepper and Rabbi Dan Friedlander. And so I hope you will save that weekend. Friday evening, we'll have a sermon and song looking at the development of synagogue music from the influence of the contemporary music, starting with Debbie Friedman, in which Jeff and Dan followed pretty closely after, and along with her going up to things to today. And they'll be doing a big concert Saturday night and Torah study and song on Saturday morning. And then Rabbi Friedlander will be talking about different Jewish communities, progressive Jewish communities elsewhere in the world outside of Israel and the United States, as he was the head of the World Union for Progressive Judaism for several years. So that should be enjoyable and fun, and you can check out everything else in here. As a side note, on Monday evening, if you don't have things going on, Deb Williams is one of 2 of the readers at the Broome County Library with 2 stories of Jewish humor. The Hungry Ear Presents is what it's called. So it's at the main library at 5:30. So we put it in because Deb is one of the 2 people presenting. So those are some of the things coming up in the near future, and we'll be getting together hopefully when our numbers can go down a little bit. We'll actually be able to be together in the sanctuary without masks on again, or it'll be your choice to have them on or off. eat together again inside. For now, we're eating outside together, but it's still good to be able to come together whichever ways we can.
So Danny and Jeff are going to be at your temple?
Yes.
Wow, that's great. It's amazing.
They had a lot of things that were planned for their whole 50th year celebration, and then COVID, so anything was remote. So it great to have them with us in person and all for that weekend.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, enjoy. And I wish all of you good health. Stay safe. And Shabbat Shalom to all of you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Together. And